First contact. Sarah Chen had always known that terraforming was a lonely profession. After 5 years of solo missions across the Outer Rim, she'd grown accustomed to the silence of empty planets and the company of only her AI assistant. But nothing in her training had prepared her for what she found in the crystalline caves of Proxima B742. The readings had been unusual from the start. Her scanner picked up complex organic compounds that shouldn't exist on this frozen world, leading her deeper into the labyrinth of luminescent crystal formations. The cave walls pulsed with an eerie blue light, casting dancing shadows that played tricks with her eyes. But the soft cry that echoed through the chamber was unmistakably real. There, nestled in a natural cradle of crystals, lay something that defied explanation. At first glance, it appeared to be a mass of shifting colors, like oil on water. But as Sarah drew closer, the shape resolved itself into a small, infant-like form. Its skin was translucent, showing traces of internal organs that followed no biology she'd ever studied. Multiple pairs of iridescent eyes blinked up at her, and tendrils that might have been hair or sensory organs waved gently in her direction. "Aria, are you seeing this?" Sarah whispered to her AI companion. "Affirmative," the AI responded through her helmet speakers. "The entity appears to be a living organism, approximately equivalent to a human infant in development. Core temperature and biorhythms suggest it is in distress." Sarah's hand hovered over her emergency beacon. Protocol was clear. Any first contact scenario required immediate notification of the Xenological Affairs Bureau. But something made her hesitate. The cave showed signs of recent activity: scraped walls, discarded technology unlike anything she'd seen before. Whatever had left this child here had done so deliberately. "Aria, what's the infant's survival probability if we wait for an XAV team?" There was a pause as the AI calculated. Given the dropping temperature and unique biological requirements, less than 20%. The child made that sound again, not quite a cry, more like chimes in the wind, and one of its tendrils wrapped around Sarah's outstretched finger. The touch sent a jolt through her suit's sensors, registering as both electrical and psychic activity. "Ma'am," Aria interjected, "I feel compelled to remind you that removing a xenological specimen from its discovery site is a Class 1 violation off. Override Protocol Delta 7. Sarah interrupted, already removing her outer thermal layer to wrap around the infant. "Logged that I found evidence of environmental instability requiring immediate evacuation." She knew she was crossing a line. Her career, her freedom, possibly even her life would be forfeit if she was caught. But as she cradled the alien child against her chest, feeling its rapid heartbeats, all three of them, synchronized with her own, Sarah knew she couldn't leave it to die in the bureaucratic machinery of the XAV. The journey back to her ship was a blur of crystalline reflections and racing thoughts. The child remained surprisingly quiet, only occasionally emitting soft musical tones that seemed to respond to her own heightened emotions. Her ship's airlock had barely cycled before she was rushing to the medical bay, grateful for the extensive xenobiology equipment required for terraforming assessment. "Aria, full biological scan. I need to know everything. Atmospheric requirements, nutritional needs, potential pathogens, and delete all records of the cave location from the ship's logs." As the scanner hummed to life, Sarah looked down at the extraordinary being in her arms. The child's skin had taken on a soft golden hue, and its eyes, all 6 of them, tracked her movements with an intelligence that seemed beyond its apparent age. "I don't even know what to call you," she murmured. The infant's tendrils formed complex patterns in response, and for a moment, Sarah could have sworn she felt a whisper of meaning brush against her consciousness. "Echo," she said suddenly, though she couldn't have explained why. "Your name is Echo." A cascade of colors rippled across Echo's skin, and the musical tones took on a harmony that could only be described as pleased. "Preliminary scan complete," Aria announced. "The subject appears to be a hybrid species, combining elements of both organic and crystalline life forms. Respiratory system can process standard atmosphere, but requires trace elements of noble gases. Digestive system suggests omnivorous capability with a preference for energy-rich compounds. Most notably, the entity appears to possess a form of biochemical communication ability through both bioluminescence and electromagnetic field generation. Sarah began programming the environmental controls of her quarters, already calculating what supplies she'd need to synthesize. Can we keep it healthy with what we have on board? Affirmative, though long-term care will require specialized solutions. However, Sarah, I must point out the larger concern. The level of biological engineering evident in the subject's genome suggests an origin far beyond current known species capabilities. Whoever created this child will likely want it back. Sarah looked at Echo, now contentedly exploring its new surroundings with gentle waves of its tendrils. The infant had begun to glow softly, creating patterns that matched the crystal formations of its birth cave. In those patterns, Sarah saw both the wonder and the danger of what she discovered. Then we'll need to disappear, she said firmly. Plot a course for the frontier colonies, and initiate total communication blackout. From now on, we're on our own. As her ship broke orbit, leaving the crystalline caves and their mysteries behind, Sarah felt Echo's consciousness brush against hers again. This time, the sensation carried distinct impressions: warmth, safety, trust. She had no way of knowing if she was interpreting these alien thoughts correctly, but her response required no translation. "I'll keep you safe," she promised, knowing that these words marked the beginning of an adventure that would change both their lives forever. "Whatever it takes, I'll protect you." Echo's skin shifted to match the colors of Sarah's terraforming suit, and its musical tones harmonized with the hum of the ship's engines. Together, they vanished into the depths of space, leaving behind one world, but heading toward another, one they would create together. Learning to care. 3 weeks into their journey through uncharted space, Sarah discovered that raising an alien child was far more challenging than any terraforming project she'd ever undertaken. Echo's rapid development constantly forced her to adapt, often in ways that defied both logic and physics. ARI, environmental alert in Section 3. Sarah called out, racing down the corridor of her ship. She found Echo hovering near the ceiling, its crystalline structures refracting light in patterns that had somehow overridden the ship's artificial gravity. "Echo, sweetie, we talked about this," Sarah sighed, reaching up toward the happily bobbing infant. "The ship's systems aren't toys." Echo's skin rippled with apologetic blues and purples, but Sarah caught the undertone of mischievous yellow that meant the child understood exactly what it was doing. The gravity slowly normalized, and Echo floated down into her waiting arms, its tendrils immediately wrapping around her in what she'd come to recognize as a hug. The physical changes in Echo over the past weeks had been remarkable. Its originally translucent skin now shifted through complex patterns that Sarah was slowly learning to read like a language. The crystalline formations that had seemed random at first had organized themselves into delicate structures that grew and changed daily. Most surprisingly, Echo had developed the ability to manipulate energy fields, starting with light and gravity, much to Sarah's mixed amazement and concern. Analysis update, Araya announced. Echo's latest developmental markers suggest accelerated cognitive growth approximately 300% faster than human standard. Additionally, the crystalline structures appear to be forming into what might be a secondary nervous system. Sarah settled into the ship's small medical bay, where she'd set up a monitoring station for Echo's unique biology. "Show me the comparison charts," she requested, watching as holographic displays materialized around them. Echo reached out with its tendrils, interacting with the light patterns in ways that somehow altered the data representation. "Fascinating," Araya commented. "Echo appears to be interpreting and manipulating the information at a quantum level. This suggests capabilities far beyond our initial assessments." A sudden alert flashed across the screens. Echo's latest attempt to play with the ship's systems had drawn more power than usual, and their reserves were running dangerously low. They needed to resupply, but every port carried the risk of discovery. "What's our nearest option for restocking?" Sarah asked, already dreading the answer. "The mining colony on Versailles is 12 hours at current speed," Araya replied. "However, I must note that it is a registered United Earth outpost, with standard security protocols." Sarah looked down at Echo, who was now creating miniature constellations with points of light between its tendrils. The child's abilities were growing stronger each day, making it harder to hide. But they were running out of options. "Plot the course," she decided, "but we'll need a better disguise this time." The next few hours were spent modifying one of her old environmental suits into a containment unit that could mask Echo's unique energy signature. The child seemed to understand the gravity of the situation, remaining unusually still as Sarah worked. Its skin had taken on the dull gray of the ship's walls, another new trick it had developed for camouflage. As they approached Versailles, Sarah rehearsed their cover story. She was a freelance terraforming consultant, stopping for routine supplies. The modified suit contained sensitive equipment. Nothing to see, nothing to question. But Echo had other plans. The moment they docked at the colony's main port, Echo's crystalline structures began to resonate with something in the environment. The child's usual soft chimes turned into an urgent harmony that set Sarah's teeth on edge. "RIA, what's happening?" Detecting unusual energy signatures throughout the colony, the AI reported. They appear to be responding to Echo's presence. Similar crystalline formations to those in Echo's birth cave have been detected in the deeper mining levels. Sarah's heart raced. They'd stumbled onto something, perhaps answers about Echo's origins, but more likely danger. The choice to stay and investigate or flee immediately weighed heavily on her. A series of images flashed through her mind, not her own thoughts, but Echo's increasingly sophisticated attempts at communication. Crystal caves, beams of light, a sense of loss and searching. The child was trying to tell her something important. "Ma'am," Arai interrupted her thoughts. "Colony security is showing unusual activity. They appear to be implementing quarantine protocols." Echo's skin had turned a deep, pulsing purple, a color Sarah had never seen before. The child's tendrils reached toward the colony with clear purpose, and for the first time, Sarah heard words in the musical tones. "Others, like me, trapped." The security alert changed to a full alarm. They had seconds to decide, run or dive deeper into the mystery they'd discovered. Sarah looked at the child she'd risked everything to save, understanding that Echo had just revealed a truth that would change everything. This wasn't just about protecting one unique being anymore. There were others, and they needed help. "Arai, lock down the ship," Sarah commanded, her voice steadied despite her racing heart. "And pull up everything you can find about Versailles's mining operations. If there are more children like Echo down there, we're not leaving without them." Echo's crystalline structures flared with brilliant light, its consciousness merging with hers more strongly than ever before. In that moment of connection, Sarah saw flashes of what awaited them in the depths of the colony. Secrets that powerful people had gone to great lengths to hide, and truths that would shake the foundations of human understanding of life itself. The alarms grew louder, but Sarah stood firm, holding Echo close as they prepared to face whatever came next. She had chosen this path weeks ago in a crystal cave, and she would see it through to the end, not just for Echo now, but for all the others waiting in the darkness below. Unwanted attention. The descent into Versailles's lower levels felt like entering another world. Sarah's boot prints left glowing marks in the crystalline dust that covered everything, and the air itself seemed to shimmer with barely contained energy. Echo, secured against her chest in the modified environmental suit, hummed with increasing intensity as they went deeper. "Security teams are converging on level 14, Araya warned through Sarah's earpiece. "They're using energy signature scanners. Standard containment protocols won't hide Echo much longer." Sarah ducked into a maintenance tunnel just as a squad of armored figures thundered past. Their weapons looked nothing like standard colony security gear. These were military-grade suppressors, designed for containing energy-based life forms. They knew, Sarah whispered, the realization hitting her hard. They've been containing these beings all along. Echo's consciousness brushed against hers, sharing fragments of memory that weren't its own. Sarah saw flashes of vast crystal gardens growing in zero gravity, beams of pure energy and thought dancing between the formations. Then darkness, capture, separation. The memories carried such profound loss that tears welled in her eyes. "How many?" she asked softly. Echo's response came in pulses of light that Araya translated. 7. Young ones. Like me, but different. They sleep in the crystal heart. A massive blast door blocked their path, covered in warning signs about radiation and quarantine protocols. Sarah's engineering credentials wouldn't get them through this one. But she had something better. "Echo, sweetie, remember how you played with the ship's systems? Think you can do the same thing here?" The child's skin lit up with excitement, tendrils extending through specially designed ports in the containment suit. Energy coursed through the door's locking mechanism, and for a moment, Sarah feared they'd triggered another alarm. Instead, the massive door simply melted away, the metal transforming into a crystalline structure that Echo could simply push aside. Beyond lay a sight that took Sarah's breath away. A vast chamber stretched into darkness, its walls lined with pulsing crystal formations far larger than those in Echo's birth cave. But it was the center of the room that drew her attention. 7 crystalline pods, each containing a softly glowing form. "Life support systems detected," Araya reported. "They appear to be in some form of stasis. Warning: security forces are regrouping. Estimated 6 minutes until they breach this level." Echo was already moving, its power reaching out to the pods. The other children responded, their own lights pulsing in harmony with Echo's song. One by one, the pods began to crack. "Stop right there." Sarah spun to find a man in a pristine lab coat standing in a hidden doorway, flanked by armed guards. His accent was pure corporate central, his bearing that of someone used to complete authority. "Do you have any idea what you're interfering with?" he demanded. "Those specimens represent the next stage of human evolution. The power to reshape matter itself. We're on the verge of understanding their genetic structure, of learning to replicate their abilities." "They're children," Sarah cut him off, her voice hard. "Not specimens, not weapons. Children." The man's face twisted with contempt. "They're the products of an ancient civilization's attempts at transcendence, the only successful examples we've ever found. Do you really think we'll let you walk out of here with them?" Behind her, Sarah heard the pods shatter. The chamber filled with light as 7 small beings rose into the air, their forms similar to Echo's, but each unique in their crystalline patterns and energy signatures. Echo sang to them, and they responded, their combined harmonies making the very air vibrate with power. The guards raised their weapons, but Sarah noticed their hands were shaking. They'd never faced anything like this. "Last chance," the scientist warned. "Stand down, or—" He never finished the sentence. The children moved as one, their combined power turning the entire chamber into crystal. The guards found themselves encased up to their necks, their weapons transformed into delicate crystalline sculptures. Sarah felt Echo's joy at finding others of its kind, but also its fierce protectiveness toward her. The other children seemed to pick up on this, their lights dimming slightly as they approached her with curiosity. "Ma'am." Araya's voice held unprecedented urgency, detecting massive power fluctuations throughout the colony. The children's combined presence is affecting all crystalline structures. Structural integrity of the mining facility is becoming unstable. The scientist laughed despite his predicament. "You see, you can't control them. No one can. If they leave containment, they'll bring this entire colony down." But Sarah saw something in the shifting lights and colors of the children's communication that the scientist had missed. They weren't out of control. They were transforming the environment to better suit their needs, just as Echo had done on a smaller scale with her ship. "They don't need to be controlled," she said, reaching out to the nearest child who had drifted close to her. Its tendrils intertwined with her fingers, just as Echo had done in that first cave. "They need to be understood, to be loved." Echo shared another burst of images, a vast ship made entirely of living crystal, powered by the very essence of its inhabitants. The other children added to the vision, showing Sarah how they could transform her small vessel into something capable of sustaining them all. The colony's emergency sirens began to wail as the transformation spread through its structures. They had minutes at most before the whole place came down or reinforcements arrived. "Time to go," Sarah announced. As they raced through the disintegrating facility, in a protective Sarah felt the brush she started back consciousnesses against her mind. Each unique for deep space, but all sharing the same far from any UE outposts. Gratitude. And what these children would reshape her understanding of life. Where will you take them? Of what was Sarah possible. Looked back at the man who had kept these extraordinary beings was getting them to study them like lab rats. Echo pressed close to her heart, seeing them for its light pulsing in time with her racing pulse. She said simply, and shared one clear thought. "I'm taking them home. You are our home now." Finding family. Sarah's small terraforming vessel had never been designed to house 8 energy-based children and their human guardian. But then again, the ship wasn't exactly a normal terraforming vessel anymore. Over the past 3 days, she had watched in awe as the children transformed her home into something entirely new. The metal walls now pulsed with crystalline veins that channeled energy throughout the ship. The engine room had become a garden of geometric crystals that somehow produced more power than her old fusion drive ever could. Even the living quarters had been reshaped into organic-looking chambers that responded to their occupants' needs. Hull integrity at 200% above original specifications, Araya reported, her own systems now integrated with the crystalline network. Power output exceeds measurable parameters. However, the changes are making us conspicuous. Sarah watched as Nova, one of the younger children, created a small galaxy of light in the ship's new central chamber. Each of the 8 had developed distinct personalities and abilities. Nova was fascinated by stars, while Pulse could manipulate energy fields with incredible precision. Circuit loved to interface with the ship's systems, and Echo, her first child, had become a natural leader among its siblings. "They're going to find us eventually," Sarah acknowledged, running her hand along a wall that hummed in response to her touch. "We need answers before that happens. Echo, can you show me more about where you came from?" Echo drifted down from where it had been teaching River, another sibling, to modify light patterns. Its crystalline structures had grown more complex, now forming intricate geometric patterns that shifted with its moods. The child reached for her, and Sarah prepared herself for the now familiar sensation of shared consciousness. The images came faster and clearer than before. A vast civilization of crystal beings, masters of energy and matter. Their ships were living things that sailed on solar winds between the stars. But there was something else, a darkness spreading between the stars, consuming light itself. The crystal beings had created the children as an experiment, seeding them across the galaxy in hopes that some would survive and evolve into something new. They wanted you to be able to adapt, Sarah realized, holding Echo close as the vision faded. That's why you can change your forms, why you respond to different environments. You're not just refugees. You're the next step in their evolution. A warning alarm cut through her thoughts. Circuit, who had merged partly with the ship's sensors, pulsed urgent patterns of red and orange. Multiple vessels detected, Araya translated. Military signatures. They're using the crystal radiation to track us. Sarah rushed to the bridge, which now looked more like a crystal cave than a starship command center. The tactical display showed 5 United Earth warships closing in from different directions. They'd found a patrol route and walked right into a trap. Options, she asked. Standard evasion strategies are ineffective due to our energy signature, Araya replied. We cannot outrun them, and our modifications make us unable to dock at any standard port." The children gathered around her, their lights dimming with concern. They could feel her fear, but also her determination not to let them be taken. Echo pressed close, sharing another image. This one not a memory, but a possibility. "The void cascades," Sarah breathed. "Echo, that's suicide. The gravitational distortions would tear any ship apart." Echo's response came in both images and emotions. The children could protect the ship. Together, they were strong enough. But they needed her to trust them completely. The pursuing ships were closing in. Sarah had seconds to decide. "Era, plot a course for the void cascades. Kids, show me what you can really do." The children moved as one, their crystalline structures resonating in perfect harmony. The ship's interior lit up like a new sun as they poured their power into its systems. Sarah felt the vessel change around her, becoming something that was neither fully ship nor fully crystal, but a perfect fusion of both. They hit the edge of the cascades at full speed. The pursuing ships hesitated, unable to follow into the chaotic space where gravity itself went wrong. Sarah watched in amazement as reality twisted around them, but their crystalline hull simply flowed like water, adapting to each distortion. The children sang as they worked, their combined consciousness guiding the ship through impossible geometries. Sarah felt Echo's joy at working with its siblings, their shared power growing stronger than any of them had been alone. This was what their creators had intended, not weapons or specimens to be studied, but beings who could face the impossible and reshape it to their will. Through the chaos of the cascades, Echo shared one final vision. A distant sector of space where the stars shone with unusual colors. Something was waiting for them there, perhaps answers, perhaps others of their kind. But getting there would mean crossing the most dangerous region of known space. "We'll find a way," Sarah promised, embracing not just Echo, but all of her extraordinary children. Together, the ship emerged from the cascades into a region of space Sarah had never seen before. Behind them, the pursuing vessels had fallen away, unable to track them through the gravitational distortions. But ahead lay something far more challenging, a journey into unknown space, searching for the truth about her children's origins and the darkness their creators had feared. As Sarah plotted their new course, she reflected on how much her life had changed in the weeks since finding Echo in that crystal cave. She had gone from a solitary terraformer to the mother of 8 impossible children, from a law-abiding citizen to a fugitive from Earth's military. But watching her children work together, seeing them grow and learn and create wonders she could never have imagined, she knew she would make the same choice again. They were more than just a crew now, more than refugees or experiments. They were a family, bound not by blood or species, but by choice and love. And together, they would face whatever waited for them among the strange stars ahead. Standing together, the stars were wrong. Sarah had been a terraformer long enough to know the standard patterns of every charted constellation. But here, at the edge of known space, nothing was familiar. The stars pulsed with strange colors, and the very fabric of space seemed to ripple like the surface of a disturbed pond. "Crystalline radiation levels are off the charts," Araya reported. "The children are responding." Indeed, all 8 of her adopted children had gathered at the ship's observation dome, their forms shifting and flowing with unusual intensity. The crystalline growths that now covered most of the ship's interior were resonating with whatever force permeated this region of space. Echo, now nearly twice its original size, pressed against the transparent crystal of the dome. Home, it shared, but wrong. Change, darkness came. The other children added their own impressions to Echo's message, creating a cascade of images in Sarah's mind. A vast civilization of crystal beings, their cities spanning entire solar systems. Then something moving between the stars, not so much a physical darkness as an absence, a void that consumed energy itself. The crystal beings had fought it, but they couldn't adapt fast enough. So they had created the children, seeding them across the galaxy as their last hope. Multiple anomalies detected. HFY interrupted. Something is approaching. The void between the stars began to move, forming patterns that hurt Sarah's eyes to look at. Her children pressed closer together, their light pushing back against the encroaching darkness. Through their shared connection, Sarah felt their fear, but also their determination. A voice echoed through the ship, not in sound, but in pulses of energy that the children translated for her. DESEEDS return, but TAINTED, changed, corrupted by organic life. Massive crystalline structures emerged from the darkness, ships or beings, Sarah couldn't tell. But unlike her children's warm, flowing light, these crystals were rigid, cold, geometric perfection, taken to an oppressive extreme. "We are the guardians," the voice continued. "We remain to protect the purity of the crystal consciousness. These experiments were a failure. They must be cleansed." Sarah felt the weight of eons in that voice, the unyielding perspective of beings who had watched stars live and die. But she also felt something they couldn't, the love and trust of her children, the family they had built together. "You're wrong," she said, standing before her children protectively. "They're not a failure. They're exactly what their creators hoped for. They can adapt, grow, change. They understand things you never could." Impossible. Organic life is CHAOS. Imperfection. Corruption. The crystal ships moved closer, their energy beginning to pull at her children. But instead of being drawn away, all 8 of them linked their tendrils together, forming a circle around Sarah. Their song, usually a harmony of separate voices, became a single perfect note. Through their combined consciousness, Sarah finally understood. The crystal consciousness had split into 2 factions during their war with the darkness. The Guardians had chosen to remain pure, unchanging, and in doing so, had become as rigid and destructive as the void they fought. But Sarah's children were the legacy of those who had chosen to evolve, to find new ways to survive. "Look at them," Sarah challenged. "Really look. They're not just crystal anymore, and not just organic. There's something new, something that can fight the darkness in ways you never could." As if in response, the void began to seep in around them, drawn to the power of the confrontation. The Guardians' perfect crystalline forms began to crack as the entropy touched them, but Sarah's children simply flowed and adapted, their light pushing back the darkness. Echo released a pulse of pure energy, showing the Guardians the truth, how their fusion of crystal and organic life allowed them to reshape reality itself, to adapt to any threat, to find new solutions where the old ways failed. The other children added their own experiences, the joy of discovery, the strength of family bonds, the power of choosing love over purity. For a moment that felt like eternity, nothing moved. Then, slowly, the rigid patterns of the guardian ships began to change. "Perhaps we AVGURVN2 changing," the voice admitted. "The darkness spreads. Our perfect forms shatter before it. But you flow around it, through it, with it. Let us help you," Sarah offered. "My children understand both worlds. They can teach you to adapt, to grow again. And in return, you can teach them about their heritage, their true purpose." The space around them shifted as the Guardians contemplated her words. Sarah felt her children's excitement at the possibility of learning from their ancestors, tempered by their fierce determination to remain a family. "It will mean change," the voice warned. "For all of us." Sarah smiled, feeling Echo's tendril wrap around her hand. Change is what they do best. The void retreated as the children and the Guardians began to communicate in earnest, sharing knowledge and experience across the gulf of centuries. The rigid crystal ships gradually took on more organic patterns, while Sarah's children absorbed ancient wisdom about their true nature and capabilities. "Well," Sarah said to ARIA as they watched the exchange, "looks like we're going to need a bigger ship." "Indeed," the AI agreed. though I suspect our definition of ship may need some revision." Sarah laughed, watching her family grow in ways she could never have imagined when she first found Echo in that cave. They had created something entirely new, not just her children's hybrid form, but a new kind of family, a new way of looking at life itself. The stars pulsed around them with renewed energy as crystal and organic life learned to work together, pushing back the darkness that had threatened both. Sarah felt Echo's consciousness brush against hers one last time, sharing not memories or visions, but pure emotion, love, gratitude, and the unshakable certainty that they would face whatever came next together. They were no longer refugees or experiments. They were pioneers, bridge builders between ancient crystal and living flesh, between unchanging permanence and endless adaptation. But most importantly, they were family, proof that love could transcend the boundaries of species, space, and reality itself. And somewhere in the darkness between the stars, the void began to retreat from the light of something it had never encountered before, hope in an entirely new form.